He came to us with promises, promises of hope, promises of change. Harrison Blake, they called him, a man of the people, a man who understood our struggles, a man who could lead us to a brighter future. He spoke with such conviction, with such fire. He painted a picture of a nation reborn, a nation united. We believed him. We wanted to believe him. We elected him president. We handed him the keys to the kingdom. We didn't know we were inviting a wolf in sheep's clothing. The signs were there, of course, the whispers of backroom deals and shady connections, the sudden, unexplained wealth, the ruthlessness with which he silenced his critics. But we ignored them. We wanted to believe in the fairy tale. We wanted to believe that for once someone was on our side. The truth, as always, was far more sinister. President Blake's true nature revealed itself slowly, insidiously, like a poison seeping into the veins of our nation. He stacked the courts with his cronies. He rewarded his allies with lucrative contracts. He used the machinery of government to enrich himself and his friends, while the rest of us struggled to make ends meet. The promises he made on the campaign trail were forgotten, replaced with a cold, calculating greed that knew no bounds. He manipulated the media, turning them into his personal cheerleaders. Dissent was silenced, labeled as unpatriotic. Fear became the order of the day. Fear of speaking out, fear of standing up, fear of being on the wrong side of President Blake. The House of Cards was built on lies. It was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. At first, the whispers of discontent were just that, whispers. Quiet murmurs in the shadows, people sharing their doubts in hushed tones, afraid to speak too loudly, afraid to attract the wrong kind of attention. But as Blake's abuses of power grew bolder, so too did the whispers. They became louder, more insistent. They spread like wildfire through the streets, through the internet, through the very fabric of society. People started to wake up. They started to see Blake for what he truly was, a fraud, a con man, a threat to the very ideals upon which this nation was founded. The tide was turning. The people were starting to find their voice, and President Blake didn't like it one bit. The tension was palpable on that sweltering summer night. The air was thick with humidity and anticipation. Thousands had gathered in the heart of the city, drawn together by a shared sense of anger and frustration. They came from all walks of life, from every corner of the nation. Students, workers, mothers, fathers, the old and the young, united in their opposition to the man who had betrayed their trust, President Harrison Blake. He was due to give a speech that night, a speech about unity, about progress, about the greatness of our nation. But no one was buying it anymore. His words rang hollow, his promises were empty. He was a man clinging desperately to power, oblivious to the storm that was brewing beneath his feet. Clara stood among the throng, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never considered herself a political person, but President Blake's policies had hit her family hard. Her father, a factory worker, had lost his job after Blake signed a trade deal that sent thousands of jobs overseas. Her mother, already struggling with a chronic illness, couldn't afford the medication she needed. Clara had never felt so helpless, so angry. She knew she had to do something, anything, to make her voice heard. So she joined the protest, adding her voice to the chorus of dissent that echoed through the night. Little did she know that this night would change her life and the fate of the nation forever. Section 6. A gun in the crowd. As President Blake began his speech, his words drowned out by the roar of the crowd, Clara felt a chill run down her spine. The energy in the air had shifted. A sense of unease settled over her. She scanned the faces around her, searching for the source of her discomfort. Her eyes fell on a man standing a few feet away. He was tall and wiry, with a wild look in his eyes. His hand was tucked into the pocket of his jacket, his shoulders tensed. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't be sure, but she could have sworn she saw the outline of a gun. Panic surged through her. She had to do something, but what? Alert the police? But how? There was no time. Section 7. The shot heard round the nation. A deafening crack split the night. The crowd went silent, frozen in a tableau of shock and disbelief. President Blake, his face contorted in surprise and pain, stumbled backward. A crimson stain bloomed on his crisp white shirt. Chaos erupted. Screams filled the air as people scrambled for safety, a panicked stampede of bodies pushing and shoving. Clara watched in horror, her mind struggling to comprehend what she had just witnessed. The man with the gun was gone, swallowed by the surging crowd. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and fear. In that moment, everything changed. Section 8. Justice interrupted. The following days were a blur of sirens, news reports, and frantic phone calls. The nation was in shock, reeling from the assassination of its president. The authorities launched a full-scale investigation, rounding up suspects, including many of the protesters, Clara among them. She sat in a cold, sterile interrogation room, accused of being part of a conspiracy to overthrow the government. Despite the fear gnawing at her, Clara knew she hadn't done anything wrong. She hadn't known the shooter, she hadn't seen it coming, but none of that seemed to matter. She was a convenient scapegoat, caught in the crosshairs of a justice system hungry for answers, for someone to blame. Section 9. A New Dawn. The trial of the protesters was a sham, a show trial designed to send a message dissent would not be tolerated. But the government had miscalculated. The assassination, while a tragedy, had ignited a firestorm of anger and frustration that refused to be extinguished. People saw through the government's lies. They saw the injustice of it all. Across the country, protests erupted, larger and more defiant than ever before. The movement that had begun with whispers had grown into a roar that could not be ignored. In the end, the charges against Clara and the other protesters were dropped. President Blake's corrupt regime crumbled, replaced by a government determined to restore integrity and justice to the nation. The healing process would be long and arduous, but, for the first time in a long time, there was hope.